So how do we teach at Genesis? Of course, direct instruction is important. Kids have to learn from teachers actually teaching them directly. But our teachers are also going to have to deal with independent learning, where they're more facilitators and coaches and guides and not just telling kids what the answer is. There'll be experiential and play-based learning so that kids will learn by doing. There'll be project-driven learning so that kids will actually, again, do things and make things in order to learn or to reinforce topics. Kids will experience what we call hybrid learning, meaning there'll be some learning on computers, there'll be some learning that's self-paced and individualized. We'll also have situations in which kids will have to deal with relevance. We talked about the E5 being applied, but we want this to also be connected more directly to community so that it's relevant to our kids. And then one of the big pieces for us is single gender learning, where we address the unique needs of girls and boys separately. So let's talk about what that means for girls. So for girls, we understand there are some challenges. For instance, in math, there is no gap between boys and girls in kindergarten. But by 5th grade, girls are 2.5 months behind. And then those gaps translate into later career gaps, particularly in areas that we now understand are very important in the 21st century. So, for instance, in computer science, girls are only 27% of computer scientists. They are only 13% of engineers, and they are only 34% of MBAs. Additionally, they are 19% of board members of Fortune 500 companies and only 5% of CEOs. What does the research say? Well, it says that teachers consistently rate girls' mathematical proficiency lower than boys, even when they have similar achievement and learning behaviors. By the age of 6, girls already consider boys more likely to show brilliance than their own gender. So at age 5, they think boys and girls are the same, but by age 6, girls begin to believe that boys are actually smarter. We also know that girls do worse in any sort of competitive situation when boys are around, especially in stereotypically boy areas like math and science. There's just something going on in the classroom that we have to address. So researchers from some of the best universities in our nation, Chicago, Harvard, Northwestern, Princeton, Stanford, all find that girls do better when there are less boys around. And that is a finding that is hard to get around. It is almost in every case. So we believe a single gender model creates an environment where girls can thrive. So our model is one in which girls are expected to do well in math and science, that they will have real world STEM connections to spur them to do better in those subjects. We will get to focus on girls and young women issues without boys kind of hanging around, messing that conversation up a little bit. We'll be able to expose them to supportive peers and role models, where girls are supporting one another to do their very best in a collaborative exchange. And we get to focus on self-image versus others' image, because we know that our girls have problems sometimes with thinking that their self-worth is based on what other people see, whether it's in their dress or their hair. So we get to address all those things, and our girl school director and our teachers will be able to do that on an everyday basis. And now the boys model. So what do we know about our challenges, the challenges that our boys face? We know that they have been losing ground in almost every area, and it doesn't matter which boy you talk about, black, white, brown, or blue. Grades, dropout rates, special education, suspension and expulsion, they are at the bottom in all of those categories. But for boys of color, the problems have become a crisis that actually begins in pre-K. So the data tell us all kinds of stories that we really need to pay attention to. If you look at proficiency rates in Georgia in reading, you'll find that 35% of white boys are proficient in reading, 23% of Hispanic boys are proficient, and 13% of black boys are proficient in reading. That is not acceptable. If you look at graduation rates, you'll find that in the state of Georgia, 71% of white males graduate, 55% of black males. if you look at Atlanta, you'll find that 71% of white males graduate once again, but only 38% of black males. Now that data is from 2011 and 12, and there's a good chance that that number has improved in Atlanta given the changes that have been made. But how far do we think that number has gone? We all know that it's been a problem. And the worst part about that is if you don't graduate from high school and you're an African-American male, the chances that you go to prison are pretty high. So it's a dire circumstance for all boys, but certainly even more so for boys of color. So what does the research say? Well, it tells us that boys are more competitive, that they're more aggressive and active and likely to take risks. I'm sure that's not shocking to anyone who has a son. I know I have 3 boys and 1 girl, and we try to do the same things with all of them, but somehow my boys like to jump off the stairs at 8 stairs up and dive on the floor and wrestle. It's just the way it is. They take risks. They do dangerous things. Quite frankly, I'm not sure it ends when we get older, but we just do know that boys and males are different. Sometimes they're overconfident. They often like to say what they can do when it's pretty clear that they cannot. But that's just the nature of the beast. But we also know that boys are more likely to have cognitive disabilities when they're born. That's just a fact. They start off behind in many cognitive areas and require a different approach. They are also less empathetic. And I know, to the great consternation of many moms, they can't figure out why their boys don't seem to care about so many things. Well, it's because their brains don't develop in the exact same way as girls. It'll get there, but it takes a while. So sometimes it looks like they don't care. Yeah, they may not care as much as you'd hope, but they will get there, and we've got to help them get there. But they are different. Another interesting fact in the research, or at least suggested in the research, is that boys are also less anxious when girls are absent from the equation. So what does that tell us? What can we do in a single gender instruction environment? When schools can specialize instruction, disciplinary processes, and culture to address the unique needs of boys, results tend to improve. A single gender allows you to focus on their needs. So our model is one of high engagement, so that there are things that boys are doing and not just sitting. That we have a respect for boy energy, meaning we don't assume that every time they move or kind of hang around or lay on the ground or whatever, that it's a problem. That they may turn in a chair or kneel in a chair from time to time, and we get it. They may need to lay on the ground to read. We get it. We also understand that they have to go through challenges. They have to be challenged to go through a sort of rites of passage process, if you will. We understand that they need to see other men and to be in competitive environments in the academic arena. So they're going to have to do and play games and try to challenge themselves. And the teachers will challenge them at all times because competitiveness for them is very, very important.